Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our final family education night of the 2023-2024 school year. This is one session in a series of 6. My name is Kristen Parson, and I am the IEP-IAP liaison for Northstar's Career Center. I'd also like to introduce Holly Peel, who is the director of the Career Center. At the Career Center, we work with juniors, seniors, and young adults with disabilities to help them build career readiness skills they can use as they transition out of secondary education and enter the workforce. You can learn more about the different fields that we offer programming in on the Career Center tab of Northstar's main website, or you can reach out to us directly via email. We'll be sure to post that contact information in the chat shortly. We're also very happy to have 2 guest speakers with us this evening from Career Support Systems, Chris Hicks and Tamara Wayne. Career Support Systems is a local employment service organization, or ESO, that provides employment and support services for people with disabilities. They're going to be giving us an overview of the services they offer and discussing the role of an employment specialist or job coach. Following their presentation, Holly Peel will facilitate a roundtable discussion with a few additional ESOs from the Richmond area. Please remember that you are welcome to chat any questions that you have, and that there will also be an opportunity to ask questions at the end of tonight's presentations. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Chris and Tamara, and the rest of us are going to turn off our cameras.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. This is Christopher Hicks. I am the Regional Director for Career Support Systems. We are located in, obviously, Virginia, and we're spread out through the Commonwealth in various areas. I am very lucky to have Tamara, one of our employment consultants, joining us. I'll let her introduce herself.
Hi, everybody. My name is Tamara Wayne. I am a supported employment job coach at Career Support Systems, and it's nice to meet you all.
And I really appreciate everybody being here, and my colleagues, too. I'm looking forward to seeing everybody in faces. So Career Supports is one of several ESOs, employment service organizations that are in the Richmond area that are servicing individuals with barriers to employment. What we do in our primary referral sources, of course, is DARS, and we work in partnership with great organizations such as Northstar in assisting individuals finding appropriate employment, reaching their goals within their community so they can be successful. There's a little bit of brief information. We've been around since 1993. I have been in a leadership role with CSS for, and I cannot believe this, it's been 12 years. I previously was in law enforcement in Richmond. Then I worked in crisis, worked at the YMCA. So I've always been in a service kind of mode. And that's where I've kind of found my passion in assisting individuals finding appropriate employment and reaching their goals. Our main goal is to promote independence, self-sufficiencies by achieving those goals with the individual, and to be recognized, and being our best to assist individuals. And it's a group effort. So if we're working with families, or in Northstar's case, we're working with talent such as Holly, or through the DARS counselors, and with family, assisting individuals reaching those goals and what's achievable. And I'm going to have Tamara a little bit talk about what that looks like, as she's been boots on the ground working with families and individuals reaching their employment goals, and how we can achieve that. When we're working with individuals, we are getting a referral from DARS. And I'm going to use the PREETS program as a reference point. So I think that's why we're all here today, and be mindful of our time. We want to find out what that looks like. So when we get a referral, we're going to do our intake first to find out if it's a good fit for us to work with the employment consultant, the family, and in conjunction with Northstar. And if there's anything along the way to find or to reach those goals, if we're going out in the community to find out what works best, that is our goal. When we're going out in the community, we're working with individuals that may not have worked before. And so we're finding out all kinds of information about them. I think that's important when we're going out. We've had an individual that wanted to work with animals and has never worked with animals. never had a pet, never had animals. So we were able to go out in the community with partners that we have and try out different jobs. What we were able to discover in that time, doing a discovery, is finding out that this person was highly allergic to cats and cat standards. So we were able to kind of discover that, find out maybe that's not a good fit, and we can switch goals as we're going out in the community. One of the things with pre-ETS is that we're helping the students enhance and expand upon basically for their future, to find out what steps are next. So if we're doing the work-based learning experience, we want to use the workplace to gain knowledge and what's going to be a good fit for that individual. We want to develop employers that we already have in place, to go to them to discover what's good. Usually when we go out to an employer, we talk about teenagers or high school students. They want to be part of it. It's a pretty good buy-in for them. They want folks to be successful too, and they're also looking down the road. Is this somebody in the future that they could bring on or hire into their workforce? Tamara, do you want to talk a little bit about what you've discovered under the work-based learning experience?
Yeah, so the biggest thing that I've discovered under the work-based learning experience is that it really gives some of the places that I have relationships with out in the community and my clients or the student a chance to have a day in the life. If they've never worked before, or if maybe they've only done volunteer work, it's just a good way to kind of bridge whatever information gaps that they would possibly have about working. And it's great for the companies too. It's just a good fit to be able to.
Yeah, and I think when we're going out with the VR cases and the adult VR cases, we're always being mindful of employers that we can connect with and what would be good for future pre-ET students during the school year or during the summer, and being mindful of what that schedule looks like as well. I know that some families may be going on summer vacations, or some families may have other opportunities, summer programs. We want to be mindful of that. So when we're doing our intake and we're getting information from Holly and her staff, we're finding out all that from you guys. What does your summer look like? What do you anticipate? So we can work with an employer, so we're not becoming a thorn in their side of something that they have to manage as well. We want this to be a smooth transition. We don't want the experience to get lost on the administrative side of trying to figure out when we can be there, when we cannot be there. We want it to be a smooth transition when we can go out, meet with employers, and have this experience on a job site. And I think we've been pretty successful in discovering, giving some guidance to an individual that has not worked before, has ideas on what work could look like, and finding out maybe that's not what they want to do, or something that they want to do, or it could go into a different direction. And of course, that entire process there's a conversation constantly going on from, if Tamara is the employment consultant working with a student, that communication is going on constantly with the referral source, DARS, and with Holly and her staff as well, and to include family as well. I just think across the board, that communication is key. It can also be a driving force. Tamara, do you want to add anything to that?
So another big thing that I would like to add to it is that I always approach any of the work-based learning experiences from the standpoint of, I want it to be a win-win, because I really, really rally for all of my clients, these young adults that haven't really had a chance to step into the workforce. I'm trying to make it the best situation for them to discover what their superpower is, or enhance things that Holly and the team at Northstar are already working on with them. But also to make it a really good relationship with the company, because I want it to be something for future clients, something good for families, and something that could potentially turn into a work experience, a paid work experience eventually. So that's always my game plan.
Yeah, and I think that Tamara or the EC, and this is, I think, indicative of all the ESOs. I think that we're really good at what we do, and what we're looking at when we're talking about these experiences. If it's job exploration, if it's work-based learning, or a training opportunity, I think we're having a lot of lenses on to see what's working and what's not going to work. We don't want someone we're doing check-ins. So we don't want a student to be miserable. We don't want this to be something they're avoiding or something they're dreading. So that's where the buy-in is going to come from parents and family as well. Keep us apprised if there was a bad day or a family reunion that went south and they're going to meet with Tamara that following day and they're just not feeling, let us know. We can adjust, and because that's part of the work experience. We want it to be positive when we're going out in the community and we establish something with an employer.
And sometimes, you know, Chris, just to kind of piggyback on that, sometimes these students that have never worked before, the growth in this whole process is finding out what you don't like just as much as it is finding out, you know, what things you'd like to do. I think sometimes we put the wrong focus or the wrong emphasis on, you know, this is what you've worked on at Northstar, so let's make sure that we only connect you with things that you've already done before. But sometimes it's okay if students have an interest in something, if we check it out under the umbrella of work-based learning to see whether it's something that they would really enjoy doing or not. It's important.
Yeah, and while we're doing that journey, I mean, there's things that we want to start capturing now when we're thinking about employment in the future. We want to start thinking about, what does a resume look like? What things are we doing in school now that, whether it's an after-school activity or it's volunteering or a family is doing as kind of a community outing, these are things that we can grab and pay attention to, that we can add into the experience or add into a resume as we're developing that. You know, we want to capture as much as we can. It almost becomes like a marketing plan for the student, for them to be successful. Everybody on this call right now has had not a so much great day at work. And that's going to happen. And that's where the employment consulting can come in and help navigate that as we're looking for this experience or being part of an employer. Just because we're at a great employer does not necessarily mean that we may have a great manager. This is reality. There are going to be folks that are just not or should not be in a leadership role, and we can help that student through the employment consultant help navigate that. And I think that's a good thing. I don't think there's necessarily a bad day because we have a bad employer or a bad manager. That's something that the employment consultant can help, you know, prepare for. And what tools are in your tool belt to help navigate that either that day or in the future when we're doing that. The folks that are involved are, of course, the ESO. There's some great ones here that are on the call. It's going to be the Division of Rehabilitative Services, DARS, are going to be involved too. Any teachers that are with Northstar, any leadership at Northstar that can guide us. And this is through experience that we've gotten some great information. We meet beforehand to make sure those little things that may be distractions or could be a barrier to employment or for this experience for us to have a discussion with and be best prepared for. When we get a referral, we're sitting down, we're talking, we're doing our intake, which takes anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour. We also complete individual ISP, individualized support plan. And it's kind of like a roadmap to services. We're going to do that with everybody we work with, so we know what it looks like going down the road, so we can have these goals of what it's going to look like and what kind of experiences you want based on where you've been in your journey with Northstar or things that you've done in other schools.
And what the team at Northstar does really well is they keep in contact with me. So as a supported employment job coach, they're a dream to interact with because our communication is great. And anything I'm working with a client or a student with out in the field, they help reinforce it in the classroom. And so that just gives, I don't know, to me, I feel like it gives the students an advantage that we're in communication. They can tell that we all have the same mission. It's important.
Yeah, and I think that we're learning about the work environment, what's realistic, what happens. You're going to have coworkers, you're going to have customers, you're going to have coworkers that can be a distraction. You're going to have coworkers that are going to derail you, and we want to be there to adjust that, to fix it. We're going to have customers at that work site that aren't always going to be in a great mood and may have had a bad day. And the employment consultant like Tamara can be on site there or afterwards discuss what that looked like, what that experience looked like. How can we adjust? And these are things that they're going to carry on with them as they move forward, possibly into an adult caseload of looking for an employment through DARS.
It also is a really great environment to be able to identify natural supports. There's nothing better than when I have a client on site in a work-based or a workplace learning program or learning experience, and I right away can identify people that are really looking out for my clients. It's a beautiful thing when that happens, when you know that you're there to help support them and get them through the process, but you can tell that they're adjusting well and that there are people at the workplace that are looking out for them. It's a good thing.
And things that CSS can do, we're going to be helping the students enhance and expand opportunities for their future. So we're looking at the now, we're looking at the future, and adjust and what the work world could look like, as you also have a social life, a personal life, a private life. Work-based learning experience, we're going to use the workplace to gain knowledge and skills that connect, with their school experience and career opportunities. I think Tamara touched on that. As Northstar is preparing you for example A, and that's what we're looking for. These are things that we're going to lean on Northstar for information on. We're going to develop employment partners. We may already have those established in our partnerships, or if there's something new, we may have something, where Tamara or the employment consultant is going to be going out to develop those relationships. So sometimes it does not happen overnight, but we're keeping everybody apprised as we're moving forward to have the successful experience. We're looking at any areas that we can identify that we can grow on, any areas that we're going to be struggling with that we can be part of to enhance that experience. When we get a referral from DARS, like I said, we're in this partnership with Northstar, you guys, and now we're going to add the employer as well. So when we're doing this, we can't have this perfect world of, this employer over here, employer B, for this experience may only be open on Saturdays. So this is an honest conversation that we're going to have that we need to know about holidays, vacations, anything where you're going to be out of town, so we can have this experience. So we're not canceling, or is there sports, soccer, football, something that's going on so we know what we're working with when we're going out into this experience. And we may have employers that may be during the school year. So we'll need to have a conversation on, well, how much school can we miss? Can we miss school? And then we're going to talk about transportation. How is the student going to get to these sites? And so these are all things that are part of that. And you're not out there alone. These are conversations that we're having in our group meetings. When a referral comes, to find out what that's going to look like, what the time frame is going to be, what area of town is this in. We don't want to create a hardship. So if we have a student that lives in South Richmond, we don't want to add an additional hardship on a family and the individual. They're spending a lot of time driving around. So we may not look for employment opportunities in the West End. We're going to look to where you live. Sometimes the employer that experience may only exist in North Richmond. But we want to be upfront about that, and we can talk about that, what that's going to look like for each student. It's all very individualized. What that's going to look like. Tamara is not the only employment consultant that we have, so her caseload won't be overwhelmed. Tamara has the most experience with CSS, and that's why I've asked her to be on this call to talk about the experience and what it looks like. Tamara,
what's really great, I feel like each year we learn more and more about the partnerships that we have out in the community. And so it's really nice whenever we get to visit these work-based and workplace readiness training programs, I have more people that I've made contact with. I have more companies that just organically by default, when I'm out and about, I'm kind of always looking for opportunities for my people. And so it's great because it just gets better and better. The one thing that I wanted to talk about a little bit, because I love the whole process. I love being a job coach. I actually really, really enjoy what I do. And I always hope that it shows to my clients, but then also that passion translates over to the teachers, the parents, the support team. I really try to make sure that everybody knows that we're a team helping this student kind of get through this next developmental phase. But I love the workplace readiness training part of it because it gives the students a really safe place to practice adulting. You know, we've done an intake. I've learned a little bit more about my client. We set up these experiences. And then when we get to the phase that we need to talk a little bit more about what you would do in a real life work experience kind of situation, they get to do those building the resume and any questions they would have about applications, and then also sometimes even mock interviewing skills that really, really help grow them. You know, you see a lot of growth from the beginning of the program to the end. If you're doing it right, you see a lot of growth. So I love that part of it. I just wanted to make sure I added that in.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point under workplace readiness, Tamara. And I think the other part is that I think you and I'm sure other employment consultants do a really good job at is learning how to advocate, getting them prepared. You know, we instead of shutting down or walking off or responding negatively, that we're also giving this process on, well, this is how you should respond. This is, you know, we can have, it's okay to have a discussion on this, but perhaps this is how we should respond to that negative customer, to a long working day, to something that maybe you didn't think what it was. We've had students go to a doggy boarding place where they thought, you know, a couple of students thought they were going to play with puppies and kittens all day, and it wasn't. It was cleaning up dog poop and kitty litter. And so their dreams are a little diminished, but there's also a positive side to that. This is that worldview of what it actually looks like running a business and being part of it. There's rough parts of every job that we not necessarily all want to do. I do not like putting together PowerPoint presentations. I like problem solving with people, but it's all good. And, you know, somebody can be there to walk you through that and give you these skills for moving forward. On the administrative end of this process and this journey, traditionally DARS will give us so many hours to move forward, and we want to be mindful of that. We want to be good stewards of that, of those state dollars on what this journey can look like. So we're updating. We are writing a monthly report at the end, which I think is imperative that family and Northstar are also copied on, that you're getting the information that if Tamara's working with a student, work-based learning or workplace readiness, what does that look like? How are we executing this? So we're in touch and we're communicating throughout this entire process. It is not uncommon if we're hitting a little bit of a snag to have a team meeting. You know, Teams, as we found out through COVID, Zoom and Teams, things like that are our friend. The employment consultant is available as needed. If there's something that we need to be a cheerleader on to discuss, this is all new. You're going to be meeting new people. You're going to be talking about yourself to employers and why you. It's all part of the process. And we, all the ESOs, ourselves, the DARS counselor, Northstar, we want to help this student get there and be successful. That is our goal, is for them to be successful out in the community, and they can grow and advance and be part of something. So that's our main goal. And we've had employers come back to us and say, hey, I could sure use, you know, I love working with the high school students, you know, and that time frame that you guys have is perfect. So it is beneficial. It is definitely growing. I'm sure the other ESOs could speak to that too, with businesses that they've partnered with, that it is definitely growing. and the knowledge and their willingness to work with students to better themselves and be part of their organization where they got some bragging rights. There's nothing wrong with that. So that is where we want to go. That's what we want to be part of. I will also send out a link to CSS's website, so you guys have that as well. And also my email address for any questions that you guys may have about it. Tamara, did you have?
No, I think we covered it all. I think the biggest thing that I would tell any student or family member is that the communication is going to be really key. So if you have a question, reach out to your supported employment job coach. If you're out and about and you see a place that might be a great fit, you think, for your student, let your job coach know. A lot of my really great accounts recently have been leads that parents have sent over, and then I just talk to everyone. So I walk in and just make some things happen. Sometimes some really great things happen out in the community that way. If you just say, hi, my name is Tamara. I'm a supported employment job coach. This is what I do. Do you think there would be a space in your company for us to have some experiences on site? And usually they're pretty good about that. And that's just one more thing before we skip to the next. And one thing I wanted to say, and add on to what Chris had shared about making sure that we allocate and use our hours that we get from DARS wisely, is that sometimes behind the scenes, there's some things going on where I'm trying to connect with community sites, and I'm trying to connect with companies to make some of these things happen, especially if I have clients that are maybe in a location where I don't have as many accounts. And so that will always be communicated so that you never feel like nothing's going on. There's always something going on. I always have something going on. I'm always working something out for my clients. And so that's just part of it, that sometimes that's what those hours will be used for me to make sure that I get some of these connections out in the community. That's it. That's all I got.
Yeah. And the overall, we're very transparent on what we're doing. We want feedback. At the end of the day, nobody knows the student better than the student, the family, Northstar, DARS, and then there's us. And we're just learning. Everything we're learning on the front end is paperwork. And then the job coach is boots on the ground, and they're learning and going to know more. So it's a process. It's definitely a journey, but it can be a successful journey. And I think it definitely with potholes and road bumps as it should, because that's part of life. That's how we learn. And Tamara does a really good job of having a supply of Band-Aids to make it a successful experience for the student. We can do
hard things. We can do hard things. Yeah, for sure.
But I think that kind of covers our expectation. I hope that answers your expectation. We are also available for questions if you get down the road and start thinking, oh my God, is there something else? Absolutely. We're available to answer those questions. And like I said, I'll share our website and email address with Holly and Kristen so she can send that out to everybody participating.
Thank you all so much for that fantastic presentation. Y'all are always so thorough, and I appreciate our close collaboration as well. And of course, it's always a good warm fuzzy to hear the positive feedback. One of the best parts about building this program over the past 10 years, can you believe it's been 10 years? We're in our 10th year, has been networking and working so closely together with other organizations in the community who are really working to make this vision of having a more inclusive business community happen. So thank you, Tamara and Chris. And I am now going to ask the other members of our roundtable to turn on their videos. And if our participants can be patient with me for just a minute, I think I have to go through and digitally do this. All right. Now I'm going to share a Oh, that didn't work, did it? Are you seeing my PowerPoint? Nope.
Yeah. The offer onboarding, Holly,
Yes.
it's showing.
Fantastic. Thank you for your help. All right. So here we go. So thank you all so much for joining us. It's pretty exciting because since pre-employment transition services were introduced a few years ago, these services are really filling a gap in what had been the spectrum of services to young people. So the Department of Aging and Rehabilitative Services is a state agency that has been around since the 70s, and it works with adults with disabilities to promote their integration into employment. But as a teacher and as a career teacher, this is my 22nd year teaching and working with young people with disabilities and promoting employment. What used to be the case is those services were available when young people were ready to enter a career. But there was this big gap between what we did as a part of special education transition services and career exploration, and then jumping into a career. For most of us, we don't just jump into a career. We have some sort of entry-level experiences where we're just getting our feet wet, exploring careers, and learning some basic skills. And so these pre-employment transition services have been really a godsend to help young people get out and get that very first employment experience in their area of vocational interest. So I know a lot of our participants here are going to be responding within the next week or two, sending in a form requesting a work experience for this coming summer or next school year. And one of the things that form is going to ask is, with which service provider do you want to work? Who do you want to work with to facilitate the service? So we generously have 4 organizations here tonight. You have met Career Support Systems, who just did this presentation, but we have a couple, 3 other service providers, and we possibly have a 4th who will join us if he is able to get back from a journey that he's on, who will be able to introduce their organization. So as you're requesting those work experiences, this is your opportunity to meet these people and to think about what would be a great fit. All of those of you who are participating from Northstar, you remember your tour when you came here, when you were considering a private day school. And I guarantee you that someone said to you, the most important thing about touring our school is to understand if our school is a good fit for the young person in question. It's all about fit. And that's the same situation with an employment service organization. So thank you all for generously offering your time to get to know our families. And also, I think quite a few people are joining from outside the Northstar community. So we welcome you as well. Just as a quick preview, I'd like to make you familiar with a tool that we have available on our website and will be part of the follow-up email for our participants. These are some quick and dirty checklists for you to think about as you're starting to work on a work experience or entering employment. Sometimes our students who are juniors or seniors haven't created a personal email address, or maybe they don't have a cell phone yet, or maybe they don't have identification. So these are some of these technical things that you want to think about creating as you're getting ready to embark on a job search. I'm not going to read them to you because these are things to work through one at a time as you are getting ready to enter employment. We have the same for interview tips and etiquette. So these are reminders for you to use. And then also when you get the offer, what does onboarding look like? I was stunned at how often this is skipped. We would get students who would get job offers and they wouldn't realize they had to send an email back and say, yes, I want that job. And now I have a lot of paperwork to fill out. So that's very important to keep in mind as well. So there's a checklist to keep you on track. And now I would like to invite our participants on our roundtable to introduce themselves. Kate, would you like to go first?
Oh, now it's letting me unmute. Sorry.
Okay, yeah, no problem.
My name is Kate Engel. Like Holly said, I'm happy to be here. I work with the Choice Group, as I'm glad you put my info up there. I don't think I have as many years as Chris, but I'm close behind. Been doing this for about over 10 years, and I too really love the expansion of pre-eds and how that has continued to grow over the past handful of years. Because when I started doing this work about 10 years ago, it just seemed like we were capturing, students as they were, right the spring of exiting. And this really allows an exposure to work, whether it's, exposure to, maybe some ideas and what's needed for the longer term career, but also, like Holly said, just maybe just your basic entry-level job, you know, that we all did, like I did, food service and retail and, you know, all those things that I did as a teen growing up. It's just, those experiences are just invaluable. And so it's been really exciting to see how pre-ETS has grown over the past handful of years, and we're excited to keep doing it.
Great, thank you. Travis, thank you for joining us. Would you like to introduce yourself and the Opus Network?
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Really appreciate the invite, Holly. So I'm Travis with the Opus Network. I think we might be unique among the presenters here, just in that we are probably the smallest organization. We do not operate statewide. We are focused just on the Richmond and Chesterfield area, including the surrounding counties. So we are currently doing pre-ETS services, and we are taking on folks who are interested in an internship. One of the things we try to do is we try to keep our caseloads pretty small with all of our employment specialists. This really allows us to individualize services and spend as much time as possible with each participant in order to respond to their needs. We've hired a very experienced team of folks to provide the services. All the employment specialists that work with us have at least 3 years of experience. Something to keep in mind if you are looking for a vendor is that if your student is getting Medicaid waiver services, we are probably not the best vendor to work with them because we do not get funding through waiver. We only work with DAR services. So that's something to make note of. One of the fields that we've had a lot of success in is the IT field. And we have some folks on staff that are particularly a good fit to work with someone who is looking for that type of job. So something else to keep in mind. But yeah, once again, I appreciate the invite.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us. And Anna Fiaro.
Good evening. I'm Anna Fiero. I am the Pre-Employment and Transition Services Supervisor with RSVP. RSVP's home office is in Richmond, and the company was started in 1981. I oversee student and transition services across the state. I travel around. I'm actually based in Roanoke. And we have served lots and lots of students over the years. This is our 9th year serving students in a student services capacity. And we've probably, at this point, I would say, probably have served a couple of hundred students. And as it was said earlier, it does just continue to get better every year. We're super proud of all of the places where we have students hosted for their work experiences. We do offer paid work experiences. So that's a nice perk. You get to make a little bit of money for the work that you put in. We also do supported employment services. We have WISAs on staff. We have a counselor on staff that can do in-person or virtual counseling. And we also have Medicaid waiver services. And thank you, Holly, for inviting RSVP. We're glad to be here this evening.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here. And I believe that Chris is still traveling. The other Chris, there are 2 Chris's. I hope that's not confusing. Chris Martin works with us from SOAR 365. There was a big transition conference over the past couple of days. So we had a number of representatives who work with our students who are all on the road right now. So thank you, those of you who could participate, for organizing that so that a representative could be here, especially those of you from further afield. And one of the things that's very nice about that is that we have students at Northstar from so many different localities. So I know the last time we worked with RSVP, that was a student who lived down in Petersburg, and not all organizations work in all areas. So that is incredibly helpful that we have organizations from multiple places who are participating. So to kick things off, what I'm going to do is ask some questions, and we're going to take turns answering them. And I'm going to get my computer to cooperate here. So that will just be a second. So I'm going to start by actually going a little bit off the script that I sent you all earlier, because Anna just mentioned something that I don't think we've defined for all of our families yet. So I'm going to put you on the spot, Anna, if you don't mind. You mentioned that you have WISA services, and I know you're not the only organization that does that, but it's critically important for our families to understand what those are and that they can ask for them, because as they are starting on the job search, that those can certainly be very, very relevant. Would you please share a little bit about what WISA services are?
Sure. So anytime a student or an adult comes to us with benefits, and they often express, it's very important that they maintain their benefits, they are able to work with the WISA, who runs a very comprehensive report to show how benefits may change, how that may look. We have 4 WISAs on staff here at RSVP. And if a student is going through a paid work experience, they work with our WISA coordinator to submit the necessary paperwork. So everything is covered when they're receiving their paycheck. And then also the WISA will talk with students and adults too about submitting pay stubs and making sure everything stays status quo with Social Security. And we really want to make sure that no consumer has an overpayment that they would then have to pay back. So the WISA does work very closely with the student or the adult, and they have access to the WISA as long as they need throughout the service phase and after.
So what you're saying is they're like a very special financial advisor.
Absolutely, yes.
So we have professional financial advisors that we all know how to access. But if you're a person who's receiving a waiver or SSI or these other benefits that are disability related, those are really complicated services that have a lot of rules that you have to follow and procedures you have to follow. So a WISA is a very special financial advisor, and that can be a service that you can ask for from DARS. So I know Career Support Systems, you all have WISAs as well that work in tandem with clients. I believe the Choice Group does as well. Yes, and Travis Opus Group, do you all have WISA? Yeah, so that is a great service to request right at the onset of your journey in moving into employment, is to make sure that you understand how to handle both your benefits and your big fat paychecks that you're about to earn. All right, so going back on script, my first question is, will you please name the top 2 or 3 strategies that you see bringing your clients success in their job development process? And I'm using the term job development process instead of job search, because that's a supported employment DARS term. We don't always do a traditional job search. Sometimes you work with an employment specialist to actually create or find or tailor a job. So Kate, would you mind addressing that? What are some of the best strategies you see your clients employing when they're working with you to develop a job?
That is a really good question. Honestly, I think I might cheat a little bit and on something that Tamara said. The most participation in terms of, bringing ideas to the table, I think is really important. And that's something, we certainly try to task folks with. And, like I think Tamara was saying, when folks come to us and they're like, oh, I, saw this sign, or I know this person at this place or wherever, I think the most collaborative that it can be, the process, that is, I think that the more success, and certainly oftentimes the fastest placements are when we are kind of putting our heads together in that way. And I would just, oh gosh, I got to come up with 3?
No, you don't have to come up with 3. Okay. And you can also phone a friend. Everyone can pipe in. And I have a specific question about it too.
I would just say, yeah, and just making sure that it on the collaborative idea, I think an important part is just making sure that, just open communication between, the client or the student and the counselor or skills trainer, as we call them in pre-ETs. Just so, like I tell folks, we might have ideas and you might hate them. It's just important, that we talk and we are open with each other about, what we think might be a good idea, and that they're, people are sharing their honest thoughts with us.
Right. Does anyone else want to jump in with a strategy they've seen their clients use that has really helped them be successful?
Well, I just wanted to share real quick that a big thing for me with my clients is I'm trying to get them ready for adulting. And I say it a lot, but that comes in the form of showing up dressed properly for whatever we're doing, be on time, have the right attitude. So I think, you know, it sounds like something kind of small to us because we get up and do what we do every day. But I think for these young adults, it's really important. That's the beginning of kind of how we do life. That's it.
Yeah, and the piggyback on Kate and Tamara, one thing that I think, and especially newer employment consultants, is teaching them it's okay for failure, to embrace failure. That's part of the process. That's how we're going to learn to figure this out. We just got to figure out how to incorporate into a conversation to flip it a little bit. But I think through a good employer and through the coaching and the open communication like Kate was referencing, I think that can be successful and be part of that plan.
Fantastic. Thank you. And for clarification, could any one of you please clarify the difference between a skills trainer and an employment specialist? And can that be the same human being? It's a free-for-all. Somebody jump in.
In our case, it is the same person. We use employment specialists to provide skills training services. So same thing for us.
Okay. So families, those of you who are trying to navigate this process and figure out all this jargon, when you work with an employment service organization and you're in pre-ETS getting a work experience, the person who's going with the employment seeker is called a skills trainer. When you switch to VR, vocational rehabilitative services, and you're looking for long-term employment, that person's called an employment specialist, or commonly called a job coach. Those are all the same role in terms of a support. And oftentimes they can be the same human being. And from the educator standpoint, sitting here, the advantage that I see happening with our families is that means that families and the student are getting to know that organization and getting to know that human being. So what a huge advantage if the summer after your junior year in high school, you get a work experience and you get to work with any of these lovely people on the screen, and you go out and you work for up to 8 weeks. At the end of that 8 weeks, that skills trainer, that coach knows you very well. So then you go back to your senior year, long about January, you're starting to plan for your exit. And now it's a longer journey of a more involved job development process. Wow. What an advantage to work with someone who has already seen you in action at work. Yes, exactly. So huge advantage to not only get work experience, but those of you who are parents participating, it's a huge experience for you to navigate working with these organizations. Because as you all well know, every form of adult service is its own journey, right? There's its own set of forms, there's its own jargon, there's its own paperwork pipeline. If you navigate that the first time through the work experience, when it comes time to do the employment process, you are several steps ahead. All right, this one's to Travis. We hear from parents a lot about whether or not they should communicate directly with employers. On the one hand, they want to make sure that communication is happening. On the other hand, they want to give their adult children space to move through this journey as independently as possible. What guidance can you offer parents?
Yeah, so I'd be curious to hear what everyone thinks about this. I cannot think of many circumstances where that would be a good idea. But the problem with that is that, the problem with reaching out to employers on a child's behalf is that it is interfering with their ability to be independent. But I can understand the desire too, because there's also problems with communication with some of the students you work with. There's going to be, just like in class, there's going to be some students that go to work and just don't completely understand or don't completely absorb everything that they're being told, and so may miss out on certain things. And there's always going to be, I think, reasons you can come up with to reach out. So that's kind of a great segue to talking about the services that we provide and that the other providers here provide, because really that is our role. We can kind of step into that role for you and help facilitate that communication. I think it's more professional for an employer to work with an organization like us that works with an employment specialist. It just provides a little bit of separation. And, again, like everyone's been saying, the entire purpose of these services is to help a student become independent. So that's what I would say, but would be curious if anyone else has any other thoughts.
I personally, I think you're spot on, Travis. One of the things that I try to establish early on with my clients and then their support team, which for pre-ETs is typically mom and dad or maybe older siblings, is that I need them to trust me and trust the process. And part of the process is that I'm here to bridge the gap with everything, and that includes employers. And so really, it hasn't come up all that often, but typically when it does, we can get back on the right track with a team meeting where I'm like, please let me help this young adult grow. Because sometimes that's really what it does when parents step in, is it kind of stifles the process. And so yeah, I think you're right on that. I think just if we can remind our client support team that we're here to help, and if we want to get some good growth, let us do that. Yeah.
So, and I think sometimes we get a sense of that during our intake when we're asking questions and mom or dad or somebody are answering the questions for the student can answer. So we get a sense of that, and we can emphasize it's coming from a good place. I'll tell my staff when they get frustrated, oh my God, the parent called up there to KFC or wherever the individual is working, and we're trying to get the schedule, or was trying to get, just adding another voice. And a manager, what we explain is, a manager may get turned off by that because now they're seeing, well, I have this individual, I have Tamara, and now I have mom or a little brother or somebody's coming in. So it becomes more to manage. And I just try to remind staff, like Charles said, hey, this is coming from a good place, but we got to get out in front of it. And sometimes at the intake, we do kind of get an idea and just go and need them to answer. It's okay. It takes a while, but sometimes we can get a sense. But it comes from a good place, but it has its, why are you communicating? Go through me, go through Tamara, go through Travis, let's discuss it.
Yeah, definitely. I'll just echo a little bit what you all said too. And we do spend a lot of time in the intake reassuring parents that their child will be taken care of. It's a new, scary next step, but like Tamara said, trust the process. So, and we do want to make it a smooth transition from school to a work experience or school to work. So there really is that, there is a lengthy, I would say, conversation about it. It'll be okay. Everybody will be taken care of, just to make sure everybody feels comfortable. So, yeah.
Thank you. So they can call you all they want.
Yes.
That first. Yeah, that's great guidance.
Absolutely.
And I get that question multiple times a year. So I'm fielding that answer the way you guide me. So thank you very much. All right. This next one, let's see, is to Chris. Job development or the job search process has many steps. What do you find to be the most common pitfalls that our job seekers should avoid?
I think that the job process, Indeed has helped a lot of people get jobs, but it's a lot of steps. It's a lot of password developing. It's you got to watch out for our emails, our passwords, that who we're communicating with. And I think going out into the community and making sure you're talking to decision makers. Sometimes we'll have parents that'll say, "Oh, I know this person at Publix. They can hire." Well, they're a front end manager. They're not a hiring manager, so they may not be aware. So some of the pitfalls are when we're deviating from the employment consultant, allowing them to do their job, and we're losing communication. Seems to be some of the issues or barriers that we do run into, and allowing the employment consultant to do their job, work their magic, and making sure that we're talking to the right folks. Are we following the process? We don't want to sour something because we're trying to get to the front of the line through a different process to get someone hired and sing their praises. in finding employment. So I think if we're staying the course, we're setting goals, and when we deviate from that, that for us, I think, seems to be the some of the issues that we're gonna get tripped up on.
Anybody else? All right. Anna, this one's to you. There are a lot of popular press articles providing advice about how to best present yourself at an interview. What pieces of advice would you offer as the most salient or useful to job seekers?
So definitely, I think for job seekers, really not overthinking it as best you can, keeping it pretty simple, preparing ahead of time, looking up the company, finding some information out about, so then you can bring that up in conversation when you go for the interview. Definitely doing some practice, either if that's like mock interviewing with your job coach, or anybody who's willing to ask you those questions, just so you feel prepared. Also reminding the job seeker to keep things positive in the interview. The interview is not a time to go into everything that you didn't like about past jobs. So, and then highlight your achievements. Like, this is your first chance to sell yourself. So, highlight all those great things that you've accomplished in high school or in past jobs, and go in there enthusiastically and promoting yourself positively. I really think professional dress is super important. I know there are people that will tell you showing up in jeans is okay. I'm a job coach that will tell you that's not okay. So professional dress, I think, is super important. And I also would say the follow-up is so important. Just a quick email, handwritten note, even better. I know nobody really does that anymore, but just some acknowledgement of, thank you for your time. I think that carries a ton of weight. And then following up too, after your interview, a week or so, a few days later, just, to check in. I think that really elevates, the desire to obtain the job.
Those are great tips. Thank you. I
I
have one more scripted question. While I'm asking it, it's going to be at Kate. Those of you who are participating, I would invite you, if you have questions to ask of the roundtable, if you could please put those in the chat, and we will be happy to include those in the facilitated discussion. So Kate, many of our students are hesitant to ask for accommodations at work. As we know, disclosing a disability can be tricky. What guidance would you offer our job seekers as they decide how to broach this issue?
I tend to advise people to not disclose specific information about your disability, and just have a conversation about, and again, this is something, that we can learn and build that skill. If we are happy to lead that conversation as skills trainers / employment consultants, because we have a lot of experience with it. I would say in general, I think there is a tendency. I love that there's more visibility and awareness around disability, but it doesn't. Unfortunately, what I hear sometimes employers say, like if somebody discloses what their disability is, and you hear somebody say, "Oh, my nephew has autism," or something, and what that person's autism looks like and what your specific limitations might be are completely different. I mean, everybody's skills are different. Everybody's unique. Everybody has different strengths. So, and sometimes you don't always know what an accommodation is going to be until you get in there and figure it out and you're on the job. Those things come to light especially if somebody hasn't worked before. So I would say err on the side of not disclosing too much particular information about a disability, and just talk about, you can talk generally about maybe, you might need an extra break or things like that. But again, I would rely as much as possible on the professional in this situation, because we have a lot of experience with this. I hope that answers that.
That does, and I appreciate that. It's amazing how often I hear my nephew has. And so we have to be careful, because we want to make sure that the person is focused on our abilities and our strengths. and how to tailor our experience. I will say one of the things that I've seen in the past couple of years is more and more employers. I often wind up supporting students at interviews while they're getting all of their employment services in a row. More and more employers are asking, is there anything special you need at work, before they even know that the person has a disability? Like, that's become more of a standard question. Mm-hmm. So hooray, maybe we are evolving as a community and we're getting closer to diversifying employment. I have a great question in the chat, and I'm going to take this one. Someone said, are parents included in the intake process, or is it done at school? So the answer is yes, and yes is an option. Now, I know we have some non-Northstar people participating. So if you are not a Northstar student, you can work with the employment service organization and your own school to see if it's an option to have that happen at school. If you are a Northstar student and you want this to happen at school, we welcome that. And here's why, especially if you're a member of Career Center. Today, I went out to 2 different work sites and I observed students working on those sites. I've seen them in action. And so their teacher, the instructional job coach we have here, and our admins and Ms. Parson as the case manager, we have a lot of deep, rich, nuanced information about what is already happening in the community on these instructional sites that we can then offer the employment specialist who's going to be working with your student. And we want to download our brains as much as possible to give all of these fine folks a running start as they get going on this work experience. We try very, very hard not to talk too much in the meeting, but if we can be in there, then we can provide some resources and background, and also simply be a part of the team, so that as challenges come up, which they're going to come up, that's what work is all about. I can't tell you how many times Tamara has shot me an email and we have in 5 minutes cleared up some issue that has opened the door for a job experience to move forward, simply because we have then continuity in services. So we invite you to have those intakes here. And then parents are absolutely a part of that, even if it is happening physically on campus or happening virtually. So the advantage of having it at school is simply having faculty here, because we can't all go somewhere else for a meeting, be involved in that intake process. However, it does not have to happen at school. That is completely the client choice. That is a main theme of all supported employment services, is that it is the client's choice to decide which employment services organization, which ESO you want to work with. And it's also your choice whether you share any of that information with school or not. That's your information and you get to decide. Can any of you all speak to that? Because you work with a lot of other schools besides Northstar, and talk a little bit about how that's handled elsewhere and how it has worked for you here. Do any of y'all do intakes at schools?
We've done them. It can be a then that student's personal life is kind of put on blast, because people see him in the principal's office or in, through a glass door, or what's he doing, or in the library, or just saw him walking with a new person. So there's a lot of distractions that can happen. I really like the thought of the parent being at the intake. That may not happen during school hours because they may be working. So if we could do it at their house, I want them to be as comfortable as possible during our intake, because that's information gathering for us, and not to have that additional distraction. And also somebody worrying about what they're doing can sometimes be. And this is a very small school in Petersburg area that we did an intake, and students are, oh, you're in trouble, or just things like that. But just have them more relaxed. As I said, it's information gathering, and I much rather have the parent there to be part of that intake process and developing goals. Because, like I said, we don't know the student other than what we've seen on paper. It's growing.
I will have to qualify that and say, at Northstar, the vast majority of students are going to be working with an employment services organization. So I don't think we'll get the, ooh, somebody's in trouble in this particular school. Other schools, that might be the case.
Yeah.
But
well, this is also done in the principal's office, which is just like, really?
Our principal hates that when we say that. All right. And I'm sorry, I have one more question. So I will toss this out. Travis, I'll put you on the spot one more time. As job seekers prepare to begin their search, what are some pragmatic steps they need to take to be sure they're ready to move forward?
I almost feel like that's a trick question because I mean, is anyone ever really completely ready to get their first job? Probably not. I think the most important first step is to take a step. I mean, because we could think of infinite number of reasons not to take a step. But to be honest, I think that a lot of the things that you're going to learn in a job search or in a job are best learned in the context of actually doing that, of of actually moving forward. Um, beyond that, we can help an individual determine what steps need to be taken. I think in our case that means doing assessments. Um, Also talking to the person. You can get a lot of good information from someone's past history if they volunteered or had jobs in the past on what's going to be a good fit. Um, I don't know. I just think the most important thing is to actually take a step and move forward, and not get too bogged down with what should happen first because, there's infinite number of answers for things you could come up with that, you want to put in place first. But that's what I would say.
Excellent answer. I love that. We've gotten a couple more questions in the chat that I'll read. One person says, do you think it's more common than not that people put in an accommodation before knowing if an individual truly needs it? I've run into this a few times. Do you have any experiences you can share to address that question?
I would say that, more often than you think, accommodations are not necessary if you're doing your job on the front end, which is to find a job that is a good fit for someone. Um, Accommodations, might still be necessary. Um, but if the question is asking, should an accommodation be requested before knowing if someone would need it, I would say no. I would say it's best to wait and to address that when it comes up in most situations.
Anybody else?
I guess I'm just curious, like what I'm trying to think of a particular situation like that would come into play, because sometimes it's something very concrete. You're walking into, somebody has to have a break at a certain time to take some medication or check their blood sugar or something. There's something really specific that but I think, like I said before, sometimes you really don't know, unless somebody for sure doesn't want to cash handle or run a cash register or something like that, and you might know that going in, and like Travis said too, you may be asking for that. Is it possible to carve that position or that duty out of the job? But I think you would know that going in, right? I'm trying to think of an example. Maybe the person who asked the question can give an example of something where an accommodation would have been offered or given before you need it. Does that make sense? I
know one that, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was trying to think of an example of management overstepping with, and again, coming from a good place. During COVID, we had an individual at the back end hired as a cart gatherer at Target. Hot day, miserable. Tamara, I don't know if you remember who this is. And they thought they were solving a problem. So they put him inside the store to address the dressing room area, which is exactly what he did not want. It was not, and the manager thought he was doing, kid was sweating, hot, thought he was helping out instead of reaching out to us because it was not good. Individual did not want to go back there, felt like his trust was broken. And, so I think, that is an example of having clear lines with the manager. We're here for a reason. Reach out to us. Let us know, even if it's a small thing, small things can grow into big things if you don't communicate with us, and establishing that relationship from the employment consultant with a front-end manager or a decision maker or natural supports that are there, I think is key to avoid that, but it could still happen.
Excellent. Thank you. Here's a question that I'll take, and then if anybody wants to jump in and clarify, what is the overlap, if any, between the Career Center and Northstar and the involvement with any of the organizations represented tonight? We are colleague organizations. So Northstar Career Center is a school service, and employment service organizations are employment services. So in that sense, they are separate. So for example, you're never going to see an ESO on an IEP, right? It's not a school-based service. However, our mission at Northstar is to build communities where people of all abilities thrive. And so we are working on promoting our students' skills and opportunities to move into employment. So the best way we can do that is by building and maintaining these relationships with service organizations so the handoff is as smooth as possible when it comes time to exit. So I would say that the relationship is collegial. We work very hard to be in communication, but we're separate from one another in terms of the formal services that are received. Sound good? Anybody want to clarify? Yeah? Okay. Next one. For a person that has a disability that goes through a lot of ups and downs in different situations, like getting slander from a director or people being rude to you, coworkers talking bad about you, etc., how can you deal with people in a job without causing a problem? So how do you handle those behaviors at work? It's a big question.
If it's brought to our attention, it would be great if the management is part of it. We've gone into team meetings when they have a staff meeting and talked about individuals, who we are, what we do, why we're there. Some people just don't know. We had an individual that worked at a Mexican restaurant. She was blind. People did not talk to her because they just didn't know, and she felt isolated and just lonely and abandoned. The manager really didn't know what to do. And I think it was just people overthinking it. The employment consultant went in, observed. It was just like, yeah, nobody's talking to her. Just walk by her and say hello. It was an easy fix. And then we were able to come to one of their staff meetings and just talk about that. And that woman ended up working there for like 12 years. She loved being there. She felt part of it, but it was people being shy. It was an easy fix. But sometimes there's things that are, the management could be part of the problem. And those are things when they work somebody out of a schedule. They don't want to fire them because maybe that individual isn't performing well and they're not telling the job coach and they're not. So it's easier. Well, I'll just reduce his hours. And we can see it. Everybody that's an ESO knows it. They know when somebody's being worked out of a job because they don't want to fire them. So we'll just take them off the schedule or give them limited hours. So, if we can get in there and talk with an employer and find out what's going on, people get fired. People lose their jobs. They did not perform well, or it just didn't work out, was not a good fit. That's okay. But let's communicate that instead of working somebody out of a schedule. Or how can we fix this? How can we go in and correct it, whether it's a coworker problem, a customer problem, a work performance problem? But we can, again, it goes back to communication and identifying. And I think everybody here is really good at that.
Well, you just said everything I was going to say, because it really does come down to communication. I feel like if you have that rapport with these companies from the beginning, and that means not just the warm, fuzzy, you just hired my client moments, but then the client shows up late to work all the time or doesn't know how to manage the schedule portal, and you need to sit down and actually write the steps out so that they show up to their scheduled time to work. Those are all moments where you're checking in with the company, with your clients, so that you don't have any surprises. I don't like surprises. I'd rather talk about difficult things and kind of work through it than just avoid things. But yeah.
Let us know.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like Chris said, it's okay if it's not a good fit. I think we've all had jobs that we thought were going to be great fits and they just weren't. So, that's also a part of, career employment, if you will, that, it's okay to say, hey, this wasn't great, but I'm going to move on to the next thing and it's going to be much better. So I think also from that side is important too, that it is okay.
Yeah. And I think you all mentioned working specifically with businesses where you have a client there, where you're pushing in. The other thing that I'd like for everyone to be aware of is that there are opportunities, even if you don't have an employee there with an employment specialist, to have people come in and do sensitivity training at that place. A lot of times, some of those comments are made because there's misunderstanding about nonverbal behavior. The way disabilities manifest, sometimes the facial expressions might be different. The ability to read body language might be different. Auditory processing might be different. Focus times might be different. And so Northstar specifically offers trainings, whether you've ever hired one of our students or host our students or not. I come out and I train and I tailor those trainings for the businesses. And then I know that there are several ESOs that offer those kinds of formal team trainings as well, as does the Disability Law Center of Virginia. So those are resources to come in and just as a whole group, just to spend some time thinking about disability inclusion. And it kind of encourages people to ask themselves questions of, did I come to an incorrect conclusion when I observed this person's behavior and I thought it meant something that I thought was disrespectful or rude or inconsiderate, but really it was just a different way that person is experiencing the working world. So that's another great resource too, just to kind of shift people's mindsets about that. That's a tough question. I'm glad you answered it. It's one that we definitely all have to wrestle with. Let's see. Is there a typical age range or school grade level where a student would start engaging with one of these organizations? Yes. So pre-employment transition services are available to students who are 14 years old and above. Work experiences as a part of pre-ETS are available when a student turns 16. And it's as a part of work experiences that students would start working with these organizations. So they would request the work experience through DARS, and they have the opportunity to choose the employment service organization that would provide that work experience support. And one of these organizations would then work with the student and the family to make that happen. And that feeds right into the next question, which is, do these services differ from the VR services provided by the state? So the state or agency is the Department of Aging Rehabilitative Services, that's DARS. The pre-ET services are designed for students, so pre-employment transition services for students 14 until they stop being a student. Does anybody know off the top of the head what the age cutoff is? Is it 22 or 24 for pre-ETs?
It's 22, I believe.
22, okay.
Yeah.
Same as special ed. Okay, thank you. And when a person either stops being a student or turns 22, they then would transition into those adult services. Now, that does not happen automatically. You need to reach out to your DARS counselor, and you go through a vocational rehabilitation intake process, which involves a little bit more documentation and also can involve a financial obligation. So it's important to make sure that you're not assuming that the transition from pre-ETS to VR is going to be seamless. There is a process to step from pre-ETS to VR. However, both of these types of services are those services available by the state. So then when you transition into vocational rehabilitative services, let's say now you've had a work experience, you've finished training, now you're ready to find more of a long-term job instead of just like a summer experience. You would then work with an employment, likely, not everybody, but it's very possible you would then work with an employment service organization, these same organizations that are on the screen, to support that job development and support process, the supported employment process. If you need a more detailed rundown of that, you can check out our first Family Ed Night of the year, which is in October, and all of those Family Ed Night recordings are posted on the Northstar website under Transition to Adulthood. Great questions, y'all. This is the most questions we've had all year. This is a good finale. All right, we've got 11 more minutes. Let's see what else we can get. Without any need for an exact number, can you give a ballpark estimate of the number of companies that CSS, RSVP, et cetera, work with? Like, how many employers do you work with? Are some of the larger employers, like a Walmart, working with some or all of the ESOs? Great question.
I think on our end that number goes from mom and pop to corporate, to universities, the state level, local level. It just truly depends. It depends on what an individual is looking for. To speak to the Walmart, that in itself is a complicated animal. Walmart in Goochland is very understanding. That manager is amazing. She at that time, it was about 3 years ago, she had an amazing mullet. I remember that, but she's very passionate. We had about 3 or 4 clients working at that Walmart. She carved out a broom closet for our employment consultant to be there because it was all 3 of his clients. It turned out that in a conversation at an interview, she had somebody in her family that had a disability, so it turned out to the good. And I referenced this, that since the Walmart was bought up, there's a Walmart larger one in North Richmond. An employment consultant was at an interview with an individual. They allowed the EC employment consultant to be there. This is an adult caseload. The manager kept directing all the questions to the employment consultant, not to the individual. The EC kept saying, well, he's right here. Let's, and then the manager asked, well, what's wrong with him? What can he do? Explaining to mom how that went and knowing this is the same company. How does that happen? It does happen. The good news for mom was, right, we know where not to work. And it helped us, like, yeah, let's not apply there. That's a response that we have. Somebody needs to be educated. But that just in that world, in that moment of time, same company, same branding, very different experiences. And I think that happens. And like I said, there's mom and pops to food trucks that we're working with for situational assessment, for permanent employment. It varies. It varies with the corporate to local and state companies that are on the bus line. Sometimes transportation drives that conversation. It truly for us would just depend.
Would it be fair to say that for most of you, you work with businesses, you have business partners in the hundreds?
Yes.
I know just Northstar, not even doing employment, we have about 50 partners. So I would imagine, knowing the size of your all's caseloads, you work with hundreds and hundreds of businesses in the area. Yeah, you know everybody. Yeah. Okay.
And I'll just add, sometimes when you have a bad situation with a manager or whatever, you realize they're not supportive. Honestly, some of these Krogers, just blink and there'll be a new manager and we're going back in. You know, we're gonna establish a new relationship as soon as possible.
Yeah.
I think the really nice thing too is that while we do work, I'm sure all the ESOs on the call work with big box stores, we can just as easily work with mom and pop, and we're happy to go out and establish that relationship. If we don't have it, we'll go out and form it. So it's a good variety.
Right. All right. Is funding BRS, DDS, or private? Are the case managers integral to the entire process as needed? What are your thoughts on project search programming and how it compares? So I'm going to break that up into some sections and I'll address some, and then I'm going to kick the DDS and funding case manager question to you all. Project search is a school-based program and you have to be enrolled in a public school. For everybody's information, if you're not familiar with Northstar, about half of our students are family placed or privately placed, and about half of them come through public school systems. So Project Search is a specific program that Chesterfield County Public Schools has one location, Henrico has a location, and Hanover has a location. There are more locations countrywide, but in our immediate area, those are 3 locations, and those are school-based training programs. What we're talking about tonight are these employment service organizations that happen after we're finished with school or as a work experience in addition to, but outside of school services. So we all work closely together and collaborate, but school-based services are in one column and employment services, whether it's a work experience or VR services, are in a different column. In terms of funding, does anybody want to address DARS funding versus private funding versus waiver? Who wants to take that one?
So DARS funding in terms of pre-employment or pre-ed services, as long as you're a student enrolled in high school or post-secondary with an IEP or a 504 plan, you're entitled to a pre-ed service. When you transition into, then I guess I should also say, you can have no money or lots of money and still qualify for a student service. When you move into adult services, you do have to submit financials, and it is cost-based at that point. You can choose to private pay if that's an option. We accept private pay. I don't know if all ESOs do. And then waiver, is that the other part of the question? Waiver services.
And I think all of the ESOs here do accept private pay. Is that, Travis?
Yes.
I'm actually not sure about Opus. Yes, okay. All of these here do accept private pay.
Right. Okay. And then waiver is the last, right, the last one there. So if you have a waiver, you first have to go through DARS. Waiver is looked at as the payer of last resort. So once DARS funding is exhausted or the case closes at stability, then your waiver can pick up. It would have to be a special circumstance to jump over DARS and have your waiver fund as the first payer.
So I'm going to define some of those terms. So when a person goes to work, they have the support of the employment consultant there. And then slowly that employment consultant is going to show up less and less and fade out. And we don't call that becoming independent in this world. The term is stability, because the idea is we all are dependent on other people at work to help us be successful. So stability is when a person is then working and drawing the supports from the people who are already engaged in that employment situation. And then at that point, DARS would close the case. So that is where then we might bridge over to waiver services. And I'm going to make an assumption that I hope is not incorrect. When the person is asking about case managers, I think they mean their CSB case managers. It is always helpful to have that case manager as a part of the conversation. There are also a DARS case manager that would be in contact with that case manager. The more communication between those case managers, the better. The CSB case manager is the one who's going to really help you navigate waivers in terms of supports beyond an employment consultant supports. So there are some other waiver services that sort of wrap around and buttress things that are employment adjacent, but aren't direct employment consultant services. Right, I hope that addresses the services. Okay, all right. It is 6:28. Wow, we have impeccable timing. Thank you all so much. I think I learned more tonight than I have in a while. I appreciate having everybody's faces on the screen, and I'm so appreciative of all of the families who showed up and participated and asked such incredibly wonderful questions. And if you have additional questions, we will be sending out both PowerPoints and resources. Those will come in, and so you'll have email addresses to everyone who participated tonight, including Kristen and myself. So please feel free to reach out. Also, if this was a lot of information all at once, as per always, this recording will be posted on our website so you can review it. Fast forward to the parts that you're interested in and just kind of review and think about it again. We threw out an awful lot of complex terms and processes tonight, and it is totally okay to need to go through that again. Those of you who have students in Northstar Career Center, we, as always, Katie Hennekins, Kristen Parsons, and I work with through the candidate profile process with families one-to-one to help you navigate these resources. And again, for our Northstar families, please keep an eye out, because later this week you will be receiving an invitation to provide permission for your student to engage in a job search. And also you will receive the forms to sign up and request a work experience. Any last words before we wrap up? Thank you again so much for your time, and thank you all of us who joined us. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.